Alright, so we have more news about Spider-Man in the MCU. And we're not just talking about Spider-Man 4, we're talking about Spider-Man's future in general. Today we'll be talking about him getting the symbiote suit. That's right, the Venom Symbiote is still technically in the MCU. The same one that we saw in the Spider-Man No Way Home post-credit scene. Venom 3 did not undo that. They simply just kind of did their own version of that in the Sony Spider-Man universe. But that symbiote that was left behind in the MCU, that still remains. We also have more details about Miles Morales, and it looks like Sony is still contemplating having their universe kind of mix with the MCU a little bit. And Kevin Feige has recently said that he hopes Miles comes pretty soon after Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. So a lot to talk about there. And then of course, Daredevil. Even though Spider-Man 4 might not be the street level story it was planned to be originally, don't cross off a Daredevil and Spider-Man team up yet. So a lot to go over, let's go right into it, and if you're new, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest Spider-Man news, and of course, MCU news in general. So let's start with the Venom Symbiote, and also talk about those rumors that Null might be going to the MCU. According to Alex Perez from the Cosmic Circus, the plan is still to have Peter Parker get the symbiote in the Multiverse Saga, so very specifically, the Multiverse Saga. So we're not going to have to wait till Spider-Man 5 to see this actually happen. And I remember a few insiders said a while ago that Marvel Studios really liked the idea of Peter Parker getting the Venom symbiote suit in Avengers Secret Wars because that's when he gets it in the comics for the very first time in Avengers Secret Wars. So yeah, that would be pretty cool. It would be pretty cool to see the MCU mirror that moment. However, we are not really sure if that is still the plan by Marvel Studios because Alex Perez believes that this will eventually lead to Null in the MCU. And I actually theorized this from the beginning when we heard an old rumor about Spider-Man possibly dying and the Venom symbiote saving him and bringing him back. That was a report that we heard a while ago, but now after Venom 3, The Last Dance, this makes a ton of sense, especially if you consider the Null rumors that he's going to be in the next Spider-Man movie or just in the MCU in general. Here's why this just makes a ton of sense. In Venom The Last Dance, they established that if a person dies and a symbiote saves them, they create a codex. And that's what happened with Eddie Brock and Venom. And that's why they created the codex. And that's why Null sent all of the xenophages after him. So if Spider-Man were to die in the MCU and the Venom symbiote were to save him, they would create a codex. And if there is going to be any type of continuity or crossover between the Sony Spider-Man universe with Null and the MCU, well, then that would trigger Null. He would realize and detect that there was a codex inside of Peter Parker, and therefore he would go and try to get him. And again, this just makes sense based off of what we have learned from Venom 3. And I know a lot of people say, well, that's the Sony Spider-Man universe, the MCU is different. Well, yes, but also no, because let's not forget about the post-credit scene for Venom Let There Be Carnage and the post-credit scene for Spider-Man No Way Home. We did get a crossover between the two universes. Eddie Brock and the Venom symbiote went to the MCU, and then they went back to the Sony Spider-Man universe, leaving a part of the symbiote behind. We have to always remember that Sony does own the rights to Spider-Man, and Sony and Marvel Studios work together. And clearly, based on their post-credit scenes before, at least when they originally did them, they had plans for them to cross over. And Peter getting the symbiote is right in line with the post-credit scene for Spider-Man No Way Home. They obviously left that symbiote in the MCU for a reason. And then him dying and being saved by the symbiote, creating a codex, is right in line with what we just saw in Venom The Last Dance. So logically, you could say, yes, Null should be going to the MCU if that actually happens, if they create that codex. But on the other side of this, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, there is even more connections / crossovers that Sony and Marvel might be planning. And that comes in the form of Miles Morales. Now, like I've mentioned in the last couple of videos that we've done about Spider-Man or Miles Morales himself, Kevin Feige confirmed he hopes shortly after Beyond the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales comes in live action form to the MCU. But here's the thing though, Amy Pascal with Sony did confirm not too long ago that there would be a live action Miles Morales. And she seemingly talked about a movie, which is not going to happen in the MCU, at least not anytime soon. Well, according to Alex Perez, he has said that he's heard many ideas that have been batted around, including a solo project set in the Sony Spider-Man universe, and then a role in the MCU that sets him up as Peter Parker's successor, which I do like that idea. I do like the idea of Miles Morales being our new Spider-Man once Tom Holland moves on. But if this ends up being true, if they go with this idea, then that means we might get a solo Miles Morales movie that Sony is gonna make. Now, we've heard that they consult with Kevin Feige on the things that they do. However, I'm not really sure they actually did for Madam Web, because I feel like Kevin Feige would have said a lot about that, or if they do, they don't necessarily listen to him, which they really should. But that is what it is. But the thought of Sony doing a solo Miles Morales movie is kind of scary. Now, they've crushed it with the Into the Spider-Verse franchise, and if they got the same writers, Chris Miller and Phil Lord, then they might have a good chance at making this a pretty great film. And on top of that, if they consult with Kevin Feige and he has say on it, which he should if they are planning for Miles to go to the MCU, well, then that gives me hope that they could actually do it rather well. And I also would like to think that maybe it wouldn't be a key movie for the Spider-Verse, like Miles Morales wouldn't be a key figure, especially if they plan on him to actually go to the MCU and be the main Spider-Man there. If that's the plan, then this movie should really kind of be a standalone movie to introduce Miles Morales and not really tie him into like Craven or Madam Web. Hopefully he stays far away from those people. But that's just some things that Alex Perez has heard. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige has confirmed he is coming in live action eventually, so has Amy Pascal. Let's just hope it's handled the right way. And last but not least, like I mentioned, we'll talk about Spider-Man and Daredevil. Alex Perez recently said, "I know they are trying to get him to appear in a short cameo in Daredevil Born Again, as a tease that Fisk and his Punishers are hunting vigilantes like him down. But I don't know if it'll pan out that we'll physically see him." We've heard basically at this point that they're going to at least mention Spider-Man, but from what we've heard so far, he's not going to appear in the show. But it sounds like Marvel Studios is fighting for that to happen. Now, I've heard a rumor, I can't verify if this is accurate or not, but I heard a rumor that because of Sony's contract with Marvel Studios, Spider-Man can't appear because kind of the rules for Spider-Man appearing in the MCU are either he appears in his own solo film or Avengers related films. And since Daredevil in the MCU right now is not associated with the Avengers, they don't want him to appear in a cameo for Daredevil Born Again. If that is the case, hopefully Marvel Studios can work it out. I mean, it's just a quick cameo. It's not really going to hurt anybody. And also, it sounds like Marvel Studios does have plans for Daredevil and Spider-Man to team up later on down the road, possibly in another Spider-Man movie. Because Alex also stated recently about this, the idea is to go back to the basics. They want to have that Devil's Reign storyline play out in a Spider-Man film. That means they still want the Spider-Man Daredevil team up to happen, even if it's not going to happen in Spider-Man 4. At this rate, we don't know if it's going to happen in Spider-Man 4 or not. From what we've heard, that was the original plan, but that could have changed because now Spider-Man 4 is going to take place between Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. So it is most likely going to be a multiversal film, which kind of takes the street level story off of the table, at least a good majority of that story off the table. But it is good to know that just because they can't do it in Spider-Man 4 doesn't mean they aren't going to do it at all, because keep in mind, we do have Spider-Man 5 and Spider-Man 6, so they could definitely do that storyline, they could definitely do that team up in Spider-Man 5 or 6, which is great news, and the future of Spider-Man is obviously very bright right now. Hopefully, Marvel ends up working with Sony in a good way to have everything work out perfectly, and the films and whatever he cameos in will just absolutely crush it. I hope that's the case, but go ahead, let me know your thoughts about this in the comments down below. Do you like this? Do you not like it? And do you think a Miles Morales movie handled by Sony with the help of Marvel Studios and the writers from Across the Spider-Verse, do you think Sony could handle that? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest MCU and Sony Spider-Verse news. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.